Scott Adams, the creator of the satirical comic strip Dilbert, has died at the age of 68, leaving a legacy that shaped workplace humor for decades, but also sparked some of the most heated controversies of our time. From corporate satire to public feuds and provocative statements, Adams' life was anything but ordinary. What really happened behind the pen and the panels, and what controversies define the man behind one of the world's most famous comic strips? Stay with us, because the story of Scott Adams' life, influence, and death is far more complex than you think. Scott Adams wasn't just the creator of Dilbert. He was a cultural force who redefined how the world laughs at the absurdities of office life. From the cubicles of corporate America to millions of newspaper readers around the globe, his comic strip captured the frustration, irony, and humor of working in modern organizations. But while Dilbert became a household name, Adams' life off the page was filled with twists, controversies, and debates that often made headlines. He was outspoken, provocative, and never afraid to challenge social norms, politics, or popular opinion, sometimes earning admiration, other times intense criticism. In this video, we'll dive deep into the life and death of Scott Adams. You'll learn about his rise to fame, the impact of Dilbert, the controversies that followed him, and the circumstances surrounding his death at 68. We'll uncover both the genius and the polarizing moments that defined his life, giving you the full story behind the man whose pen left an indelible mark on the world. Early life and rise to fame. Scott Adams was born on June 8, 1957 in Windham, New York, a small town that seemed worlds away from the corporate skyscrapers he would one day lampoon. From a young age, Adams displayed a keen intellect and a sharp sense of humor. He was curious, analytical, and always observing the quirks of human behavior, traits that would later become hallmarks of his comic strips. After earning a degree in economics from Hartwick College, Adams pursued a career in business, taking on roles in banks and insurance companies. It was during these early years in the corporate world that he began noticing the absurdities, inefficiencies, and often ridiculous politics of office life. While some might have resigned themselves to the monotony of cubicles and endless meetings, Adams had a different idea. He would turn it all into humor. By the late 1980s, Adams began drawing comics that reflected his corporate experiences. These sketches were raw, honest, and brutally funny, capturing the frustrations of millions of office workers who recognized themselves in his characters. In 1989, he launched Dilbert, a comic strip centered on a bespectacled, deadpan engineer navigating the absurdities of corporate life. The strip quickly resonated with readers, and Adams' combination of wit, observation, and satire struck a chord with a generation of office workers who had longed to laugh at their own workplace struggles. Dilbert didn't just become popular, it became a cultural phenomenon. Within a few years, it was syndicated in hundreds of newspapers worldwide, and Scott Adams became a household name. His ability to expose the humor and hypocrisy of corporate life made him beloved by fans and often feared by managers, who saw their own office follies reflected in his work. But fame came with a cost. As his popularity soared, Adams' outspoken personality and willingness to tackle controversial topics started to attract attention beyond the comics pages. His opinions on politics, society, and business practices sometimes ignited heated debates and public feuds. While Dilbert remained his primary claim to fame, the man behind the strip was becoming increasingly polarizing. And just as he seemed to be at the peak of his creative powers, the public began to notice a different side of Scott Adams, a side that would lead to both admiration and controversy, and eventually become central to the narrative of his life. What were the moments that turned fans into critics, and what controversies would come to define him? The answers lie in the next chapter of his story. Peak success and controversies. By the mid-1990s, Scott Adams had achieved what few cartoonists ever dream of. Dilbert was not just a comic strip. It was a global phenomenon. The strip's satirical take on corporate life resonated with millions, earning Adams multiple awards, including the prestigious Reuben Award for Outstanding Cartoonist of the Year. He also became a sought-after speaker, author, and commentator on management, office culture, and workplace dynamics. But alongside this success came increasing scrutiny. Adams was never one to shy away from expressing his opinions, both in interviews and later on social media. While some admired his sharp intellect and fearless commentary, others criticized him for making statements that many considered provocative, polarizing, or outright offensive. These controversies were not isolated. they became a defining feature of his public persona. One of the most notable controversies revolved around his political commentary. Adams openly supported certain figures and made bold predictions that sparked intense debate online. His candid style, combined with his willingness to challenge conventional thinking, drew both praise and sharp criticism. Fans of Dilbert were sometimes caught off guard by the divergence between the comic strip they loved and the outspoken, often polarizing man behind it. Beyond politics, Adams also faced backlash for statements on social issues, which some interpreted as insensitive or controversial. He became a lightning rod for debate, with discussions about his views appearing on news outlets, social media, and even within the comics community. The man who had once amused readers with office satire was now a figure whose opinions were dissected, debated, and sometimes condemned. Despite the controversies, Adams continued to innovate. He expanded Dilbert into books, calendars, merchandise, and even animated series. His reach extended far beyond newspapers, making him one of the most recognizable names in modern cartooning. Yet, with every achievement, the tension between admiration and criticism grew. How could one man create such universally beloved work while simultaneously becoming a lightning rod for public outrage? The controversies weren't limited to public statements. Adams occasionally engaged in high-profile feuds with critics, fellow writers, and media figures, defending his ideas and challenging what he saw as censorship or misunderstanding. These conflicts, combined with his provocative social media presence, ensured that Adams remained in the public eye, not just for his genius in satire, but for the debates and arguments that surrounded him. And just as he seemed untouchable at the top of his career, life began to shift in unexpected ways. Health issues, evolving public perception, and the inevitable challenges of aging brought a new chapter, one that would culminate in his sudden death at 68. Fans were left to reconcile the many sides of Scott Adams, the satirical genius, the outspoken commentator, the controversial figure, and the human being behind it all. But what exactly happened in the final years of his life? Were there struggles or challenges that the public didn't see? And how did the world react to the news of his passing? The answers reveal a story that is as complex and compelling as the man himself, a story we uncover in the next chapter. Death, public reaction, and legacy. On January 13, 2026, the world woke up to shocking news. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, had died at the age of 68. Fans, colleagues, and critics alike were stunned. How could the man whose humor had shaped office culture for decades pass away so suddenly? While the official details surrounding his death remain limited, the news immediately sparked a wave of tributes, reflections, and discussions across social media, news outlets, and the comics community. The reactions were swift and heartfelt. Longtime fans of Dilbert shared stories of how the comic strip had mirrored their own corporate frustrations, turning mundane office life into relatable humor. Many reflected on how Adams' work gave them a voice and a way to laugh at experiences that were otherwise frustrating or demoralizing. Beyond entertainment, Dilbert had become a cultural lens through which corporate absurdities could be understood, and Adams was the mind behind it all. At the same time, public discussions revisited the controversies that had defined Adams later in life. His outspoken political commentary, provocative statements on social issues, and public feuds with critics became part of the conversation. For some, these debates complicated the narrative of his legacy, forcing people to reconcile the genius behind Dilbert with the polarizing figure who sometimes challenged conventional norms in ways that stirred outrage. Yet, amidst the complexity, one fact remained undeniable. Scott Adams' impact on both humor and corporate culture was immense. His comic strip inspired countless artists, writers, and satirists, and it shaped the way millions of people around the world view the modern workplace. Even after decades, phrases and characters from Dilbert continue to resonate, proving the lasting power of his satire. As the tributes poured in, many began to reflect on the duality of his life. A man who brought laughter and insight to millions, yet who also courted controversy and debate. It was a reminder that behind every public figure is a complex human story, full of triumphs, mistakes, and contradictions. In the days following his death, retrospectives highlighted both his achievements and the lessons that could be learned from his life. Adams' story is a testament to creativity, persistence, and the power of using humor to critique and illuminate society. But it's also a reminder of the weight that comes with being a public figure in an era of instantaneous opinion and scrutiny. Scott Adams may be gone, but his influence endures. From the cubicles he satirized to the minds he inspired, his work continues to leave an indelible mark. And while his passing raises questions about the man behind the comic, it also invites us to celebrate the legacy of a satirical genius whose pen captured the absurdities of modern life in ways that will never be forgotten. Conclusion: Scott Adams' life was a story of creativity, controversy, and cultural impact. From his early days observing the absurdities of corporate life to creating Dilbert, a comic strip that became a global phenomenon, he left an indelible mark on humor, satire, and popular culture. His work helped millions of office workers laugh at the frustrations of daily life, turning mundane cubicles and endless meetings into relatable comedy. Yet Adams was more than the cartoonist behind Dilbert. He was outspoken, provocative, and unafraid to challenge conventional thinking, which made him both admired and controversial. His public statements, political commentary, and candid opinions sometimes drew criticism, reminding the world that genius often comes with complexity. The news of his death at 68 leaves fans, colleagues, and the public reflecting on both the brilliance and the contradictions of his life. But through it all, Adams' legacy endures. His comics, books, and ideas will continue to influence humor, corporate culture, and the way we look at the world for generations to come. If you found this story insightful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more in-depth coverage of controversial, trending, and shocking stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. How did Scott Adams' work impact your life, and what do you think is the most enduring part of his legacy? We want to hear from you.